On a patch of Pennsylvania farmland where the morning smelled of wet hay and the kitchen clock ticked louder than conversation, a boy learned that work came before wishes. Milton Snavely Hershey rose before sunrise to help his mother in the garden and his father in plans that seldom paid. The soil taught him patience. The family's thin purse taught him thrift. He wasn't destined for a diploma. School ended early, but he carried a sharper education. If you made something good enough, people would come back for it. His first apprenticeship was to a printer. Ink stained his fingers, typesetters barked orders, and the press thumped like a tired heart. Milton tried, failed, and quit. Words on a page didn't call to him. What did was a little shop in Lancaster where sugar and copper kettles ruled. He apprenticed to a confectioner and discovered that candy had rules like music. Temperature, timing, touch. Stir too soon and you ruin it. Stir just right and sugar becomes satin. He burned batches, blistered his hands, and learned with a stubborn streak that would shape a town that sweetness is a craft, not a miracle. He opened his own shop in Philadelphia and failed, then tried again in Chicago and failed, then again in New York and failed more creatively than before. Each time he paid his debts, salvaged what he could, and left with one new trick he couldn't afford to forget. In Denver, he watched a confectioner fold fresh milk into caramels and saw the texture relax, the flavor deepen. It was a small revelation with a long shadow. Milk wasn't just an ingredient, it was a signature. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Back in Lancaster in 1886, with no money left to lose, he borrowed, begged, and bartered his way into one more attempt, the Lancaster Caramel Company. He made caramels soft enough to bite and honest enough to sell themselves. Orders climbed, rail cars left full, Europe knocked. The factory that had echoed with doubt now rang with ladles, cooling tables, and the hush of workers moving like a practiced orchestra. At last, a win. But inside the victory, Milton felt a new itch. Caramel was yesterday, chocolate felt like tomorrow. In 1893, he walked the vast halls of the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where electricity rewired imaginations and a German chocolatier's machinery ran like a dream. He watched cocoa beans become chocolate liquor and thought not of fancy bonbons but of bars, simple, consistent, affordable. He bought the machinery on the spot, shipped it home and set to work in a corner of his caramel plant. Chocolate would be a side project, a hobby, until it became the main event. 2 years later, he founded the Hershey Chocolate Company as a subsidiary. He studied European formulas and ignored them when they didn't suit the American tongue. Swiss chocolate was velvet and restraint. Milton wanted a brighter profile, a flavor that snapped at the edge and melted in the middle, a milk note you couldn't mistake. He experimented endlessly with milk, condensing it, controlling its freshness, flirting with fermentation's edge to nail a tang that would become unmistakable. The final recipe was a secret written in steam, part chemistry, part supply chain, all obsession. In 1900, he sold the Caramel Company for $1 million, real money for a man who once pawned his tools. He kept the chocolate business and moved it to the pastures near his birthplace, building not only a factory but a town. If you were going to rely on fresh milk, you needed dairy farmers close enough to touch and loyal enough to plan a season with you. Derry Church became Hershey almost by accident. A grid of streets, brick houses, a bank, a church, schools, and a factory that hummed like the future. He laid trolley tracks and planted shade trees. He built parks, a pool, a bandstand, and then, because people deserve play, a modest amusement park that would grow into a destination. Work should have dignity, he believed, and life should have sugar on the rim. The first Hershey bar arrived the same year he sold the caramels. The wrapper was plain, the promise inside was not. A nickel bought you a rectangle of certainty. The chocolate snapped with a crisp edge, then softened on the tongue into something more than sweet. It tasted like a place. In 1907, he added Hershey's Kisses, machinery dropping tiny teardrops that caught the light and rode conveyor belts into 1 billion lunch pails. The factory floor turned into choreography, tempering tanks glinting like polished kettles, ribbons of foil whirring, the faint clink of formed chocolate tumbling into bins. People didn't just buy a confection, they bought a ritual. Milton's empire was not only commerce, it was care. He married Catherine Kitty Sweeney, whose health faltered but whose heart didn't. They couldn't have children. In 1909, they created the Hershey Industrial School for orphaned boys. Free education, room, board, and training that treated poverty as a circumstance, not a sentence. Milton endowed the school with a controlling trust in the Hershey Company so that profits would care for children long after he was gone. It was a radical act of structured generosity. The candy would fund a future. In the Roaring '20s, chocolate found new costumes. Peanut bits snapped under a milk chocolate roof in a bar called Mr. Goodbar. Malleable ribbons of chocolate syrup slid into soda fountains and kitchen pantries, democratizing sundaes and chocolate milk. Advertising began to play, but the core remained: price discipline and product integrity. Milton refused to chase fads or dress mediocrity in packaging. If the bar wasn't right, the wrapper didn't matter. Then came the Great Depression. Projects halted elsewhere. In Hershey, construction crews began to pour concrete. Milton launched his Great Building campaign, employing hundreds to raise the Hotel Hershey, the community building, a theater, new streets and gardens, and a park pavilion. Paychecks arrived where hopelessness had pitched a tent. The town became a case study in quietly anti-cyclical leadership. When the world pulled back, Hershey pushed forward, betting that dignity today would pay dividends tomorrow. War sharpened necessity. As Europe burned and the Pacific roiled, the US Army asked for a high-calorie, heat-resistant ration for soldiers who might need to eat in a jungle or a foxhole. Hershey's answer, nicknamed the D-ration bar, was dense, bitter, and designed to be eaten slowly. Millions of bars shipped in olive drab wrappers to front lines and field hospitals. The factory learned how to build reliability into extreme conditions. It wasn't a product anyone craved. It was a promise that when the country needed calories engineered, Hershey could do the math. Between wars and recessions, Milton built supply like a farmer, step by step, field by field. He even reached beyond Pennsylvania to the cane fields of Cuba, establishing Central Hershey, a mill town with housing, schools and hospitals, to stabilize sugar supply and improve worker conditions by the standards of the day. Was it paternalistic? Perhaps. Was it progress inside a rough industry? Undeniably. He aimed to be the rare industrialist whose footprint included more than extraction. He lived modestly, often dining at the factory cafeteria, often walking the town like a superintendent of a long experimenting community. He believed in rules that protected everyday joy: clean streets, safe housing, predictable wages. He meddled, sometimes too much, in the lives of workers, and age did not soften his conviction that hard work could fix almost everything. But the town he built held together because the company held its end of the bargain. If you showed up for them, they showed up for you. As the decades turned, Hershey became less the story of one man and more the habit of millions. Wrapped bars waited beside cash registers and in school vending machines. Halloween became a logistics symphony. Christmas stockings bulged. Lunchboxes clicked shut on a kiss or two, tucked like a secret. Marketing followed culture without condescension. Hershey's chocolate was the chord under 1,000 small moments. A concession stand treat, a campfire s'more, a quick square after a bad day. It wasn't luxury. It was permission to enjoy something simple. After Milton's death in 1945, caretakers of his trust kept his rules and evolved his tools. They expanded products, modernized plants, built science into tempering curves and fat crystal formations, and redesigned wrappers that felt like continuity, not reinvention. Global expansion brought new tastes and new competitors. Hershey answered cautiously, learning languages of cocoa and sugar from other markets without losing the American accent he'd spent a life perfecting. There were missteps, misses, mergers considered, and declined. Through it all, the company calcified a certain stubbornness in quality and a certain generosity in community. Behind every familiar bar was a technology that got better every season. Cocoa sourcing pushed deeper into transparency. Dairy partnerships invested in animal welfare and logistics. Food safety protocols became quietly extraordinary in their dullness. Hazard analyses, clean-in-place systems, allergen controls, tracer bullets through the supply chain that let you find a bad valve before it turned into a bad day. Engineers chased tempering curves that snap at room temperature and gloss in a humid July. The factory became less a place of ladles and more a place of sensors, but the aim was ancient. So a kid opening a lunchbox finds the same taste his grandmother did. The town of Hershey grew and softened around the edges. The amusement park added rides that pitched and rolled in ways Milton's trolley never dreamed of. A hockey team skated under the Hershey banner, and won so often it felt like a quirk of geography. The Milton Hershey School expanded its mission to girls and then to thousands of children from across the country, feeding, housing, and educating at a scale that would have startled its founders. Scholarships sent graduates into trades and colleges. The Trust's endowment, built on candy bought $1 at a time, turned sugar into shelter, cocoa into classrooms. What made the farm boy's story different from 100 Gilded Age fortunes was the way it reframed success. Milton Hershey liked money fine. He liked what money could build better. He understood that a company town done wrong is a cage. Done right, it is a neighborhood with a factory heart and human lungs. He tried for the latter, and he left instructions in the form of a trust deed that kept the company yoked to a school, ensuring that prosperity would always be entangled with responsibility. The chocolate itself remained stubbornly itself. Other makers gilded the lily with rare beans and notes of raisin and oak. Hershey stayed democratic. It kept the tang, the sweetness, the melt, calibrated to memory. It expanded with almonds, crisped rice, cookies and cream, and collaborations that nodded to modern palates without surrendering to fashion. Every so often, a furious debate flared about formula tweaks. Every so often, the company learned that you can change schedules and supply lines, but you must not change nostalgia. Walk through the factory at shift change in your mind. Workers in hairnets and sanitizing boots clock out to daylight. Forklifts beep past towers of wrapped bars stacked like bricks. Somewhere a maintenance tech checks a bearing by touch. Somewhere a microbiologist checks a plate that confirms nothing unwelcome grew where sweetness should. Somewhere a trainee watches chocolate cascade in a curtain, catches a drip on a gloved finger and smiles the smile of a child given a secret. On the hill above, kids from the school kick a soccer ball and laugh the way children laugh outdoors, full and careless. That is the machine Milton built, not just to make candy, but to make a place where candy and care could share an address. The ending is quiet. Milton outlived Kitty and never stopped working. He gave away fortunes while he could still see what they did. He rode the trolley, shook hands, corrected a manager, asked a custodian about his family, and went home to a modest house whose values matched its flaws. When he died, the town did not hold a parade, it went to work. The factory kept moving, the school kept teaching, the park opened on Saturday. The most useful monuments are not statues, they are systems that still run. Listen closely when you unwrap a bar. The crinkle is a kind of hymn to small joys engineered for repetition. The first snap is the sound Milton chased across failures and states and seasons. The melt is the math of milk and cocoa taught to cooperate. The aftertaste is a promise from a farm boy who believed that prosperity can be sweet and serious at once. He didn't invent chocolate. He invented a way for ordinary people to afford a piece of it, and a way to turn those pieces into a school, a town, and in 100 million kitchens, a habit of happiness. Stand for a moment in Derry Township as evening folds over the fields. The air smells like cocoa when the wind is right. A mother holds a child's hand after a day at the park. A teenager in a brown uniform clocks in for the night shift and learns the feel of work done well. Somewhere a teacher grades a paper at the Milton Hershey School and smiles at a sentence that tries. That is the legacy. Sweetness multiplied by structure. Generosity baked into governance, a company built by a farm boy who measured the worth of a day by how many people it lifted. The wrapper goes in the bin. The taste stays with you. And in a quiet, practical way that would have suited him, the world feels a notch kinder for it.